Greetings, unsettled souls, and welcome to the Looneybin. We have the inmates in restraints. They've been fed their rations, and we are on the phone with Derrick from Conquest. Welcome to the Looneybin couch, if you will, sir. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. My kind of place.
For those of you who don't know, like maybe I'm living under a rock or something, Conquest is everything from the heavier end of thrash to almost the non-cheesy part of the 80s, if you will. They are just solid moving. You guys started when, 89 or when was this?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I mean, it depends on how you look at it all, but that's when the first real music was put to tape, if you would, somewhere in that time frame.
I have a handful of questions that I wrote as I was. Every time I listened to one CD, I wanted to listen to another one. It was like when you find that band that you're like, where have I been? Do you find the Christian bands are not shunned or stared at like a goldfish in a fishbowl so much these days? You have bands like Cataclysm now that are on Nuclear Blast, and people like Michael Sweet have been working with even non-believers like George Lynch. What's been your experience with that since you began?
Well, I'm a Christian at heart, man, but I write all kinds of music, and I'm all over the place with my music, so I don't hold anybody accountable. That's the work of the Lord, so I leave that alone. I think that over the course of history in general, anything to do with God or anything like that, in the world of heavy metal, hard rock, it's always been kind of snubbed or pushed to the side. So for all those bands you mentioned, thumbs up, and I'm glad that everybody's still out there doing it. We don't put ourselves in any particular category. We just write the music we write, and then he who likes it, likes it.
Amen. I thought that it was. I don't know if you read it. Roger Dale Martin from Vengeance Rising just released a book, and I was looking to get my hands on that as soon as I can because that should be some interesting tales. Because you guys are from that same period where, you would go out, you'd work hard to get a record deal or whatever. Have you read the book or anything about it?
I've heard about it, but I've not read the book yet.
For
I
people,
want to.
it should be a great read because especially in reference to some of the interviews that Roger Martinez has given lately. I get this a question a lot from listeners. Except for playing shows and making quality music, what is it that bands need to do to succeed? Because you're succeeding now in the download free music age, and you were also successful back when a record deal was the be all end all. So you would probably be the quintessential person to ask this question to.
Well, I tell people who play music to love to play music. If you're trying to mortgage a house, buy big boats, play rock star, the odds of that happening in today's climate is slim to none. So I would tell you that if you love music and you write music because you love to write music and you got a good band and everybody in the band seems to be on the same page, love it for what it is, not for what you wish it was. Because, again, the industry changes about every 3 or 4 years, and it doesn't always change for the better. So as you called out a little while ago about the free downloads and the free streaming, I call it free because when you pay us for that, we don't get anything. So it's basically free. It's great that everybody gets to hear the music. Love that part about it. But then again, as you referenced the old days of a record deal, everybody strived in the late 80s, early 90s to get a record deal because it was the only way your music was going to get heard. So obviously there's a big difference in that climate today. But as far as making money, you're going to have to tour, you're going to have to play, you're going to have to play, you're going to have to tour. And even that's tough in the world of tribute bands. So as an original artist, I would tell you to love what you do it full-heartedly, and give it your best shot, and then let the cards fall where they do.
I've talked to a number of artists who you wouldn't expect who have second jobs. Do you ever find that running into needing to do something else on the side, then they have a problem when at times they hit the road? Or have you managed, or I'm sure there's been points, I should say, in your life where that's been the case. How did you navigate those?
It is. I mean, it's again, if you want to live in a little apartment somewhere by yourself, you can probably play music and survive. If you want to have a house, a couple cars, and maybe go to the lake every once in a while, you're going to have another gig to go along with it. Otherwise, you're not going to make any money. Unless you're the number one, Pink Floyd tribute band or something like that, then you might pull it off. But otherwise, if you're an original artist and you love what you do, you do your best to strive to get on some good gigs and some good shows and tours if you can. But I would suggest to you to have a fallback. Music, in my mindset, at this stage of my life, is about the love of the music, not the mighty dollar. So, kind of how I take it.
That's awesome, because I think in the long run, this musical climate might actually bring more of us out that do love the music on a base level. And I appreciate you taking, because I get that question nonstop. Friends and inmates, you very likely had that question answered remarkably for you just now. I wrote here that Save Me almost sounds like it's got like an 80s tinge sound at the first part, but then the verse, the way it first kicks in, almost sounds like it could be a grunge riff, which I thought, I'm sure you didn't aim for either one of those, but that particular mixture of sounds really stood out. It was like the first time I heard Brian Setzer add electric guitar to big band music. How did that song come to be?
So when I write tunes, man, and the band helps me a lot, but that particular song I put together on my own. And when I wrote that song, I was just downstairs in the studio, and I was just blowing out hooks. And I wasn't trying to put anything together per se. And then when I got the first hook put together, and then the second hook kind of reminds me of an old Kiss song with the big guitar rakes and everything. And then I thought, well, I don't want it to be just a straight ahead 80s rock song, so let's just change up the vibe when we go into the verses. And again, I don't try to borrow from anybody.
No.
Let's be honest, everything has been done. So when you touch something and you put your own flair on it, it becomes yours. But you're right, the middle piece, the verses have a drop down vibe, which would lean you towards the alternative world, I guess, if you want. But then, like you said, that when it pops back into the bridge and the hook, it takes you into the chorus. Man, it just turns into a straight ahead, in my opinion, a straight ahead hard rock song. And again, the song's about, all the drug abuse and fentanyls everywhere. I've lost family members to this stuff. I've lost a lot of good friends to this stuff. And I wish people would open their minds and their eyes and somebody save me, right? Because obviously for some reason, the government's not stopping it, and our schools are full of it, and therefore every other day you hear about somebody, and in today's world, everybody's so polite and kind, they don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. They always go, oh, we lost Billy, but they won't say how, and we all know how. And it's like, in my opinion, this is the wrong answer. That's why I call it out of that song and say someone dies from fentanyl, heroin, heavy drug abuse, and that way we should say what it is and call it out, because otherwise nobody's going to be saved. Nobody's going to stop doing it. So that's my take on it.
Not only that, but I'm sure you've seen this, where it used to be that if someone decided to do a drug, I personally am also Christian, but I've also been very libertarian. I don't really have a problem with the choices that other people choose to make. But we live in a world now, and this song, I think, speaks to this a lot, where you might say, okay, I'm going to take the risk and take this line of Coke, or I'm going to take the risk. I have a toothache, so I bought this pill off a friend of mine. It's the same stuff the dentist gives me. And you find out that you've been poisoned, where it's not even people making the decision to take the drug that they think that they're taking. It ends up being fentanyl, and a night of partying, or, again, a night of trying to get through a toothache or a backache kills them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're nailing it to a cross, per se, without using a pun, no pun intended there. Being a Christian in heavy metal, oh, you're what? So I always say to people, hey, you do you, I'll do me, and we'll see where the cards fall when it's all said and done. But at the same time, what you just said is so true. I fall more towards a libertarian perspective. I don't care what you do in your own house, your own bedroom, your own life. Go do it if it makes you happy. But just remember, don't hold me accountable for your actions. But what I will say to that is that because of the government allowing such abuse of the border and what have you with this drugs coming in here.
Yes.
As you just said, man, you take a pill thinking it's going to help your back. That hurts so much. And next thing you know, you're dead. And that's just not a good thing. And I don't know your age, but I'm probably older than you. And I can just tell you, when I was a kid and you were partying and you were at the parties and you were at the houses and all that kind of stuff, that stuff just didn't happen. You didn't have people dropping dead every other day.
No, they might dance themselves to death at a rave, but that was about it. And to speak what you said to a minute ago, too, I mentioned this on a comment line once, where people will say, like you were saying, "Oh, you're a Christian, what? You shouldn't have the religion in music." Meanwhile, bands with religious pentagrams and inverted crosses, which they do not mean for St. Peter, they've got religion all over the place, but somehow that doesn't count as having religion in music. And I've always found that to be hilarious to me.
Well, again, I hate to use this terminology, so I hope my metal brothers and sisters out there don't get mad at me when I say this, but most people have no clue what they're talking about when it comes to religion versus God. And to me, religion is a club, and some join the Pentagram Club, some join the Cross Club, right? I'm not a churchgoer on Sunday. Again, I'm a God person. I believe in the Lord, and that's what I go with, and I don't try to inflict that upon anybody else. Now, if you happen to listen to my lyric, you might find a positive statement in there. You might find something that reflects such a thing. But, back in the day, in 2004, I was sitting down at a dinner, and Adam Greer from Jägermeister hits me up and says, hey, Derrick, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm actually just sitting down to hit some dinner. Can you call me back? He goes, no, you're in a perfect spot. You guys are going to get to open the first 4 gigs of the Slayer tour, the Rain and Blood Wall in 2004, which, awesome in the metal world. You're like, wow, right? So long story short, I'm backstage with those guys, and I'm talking to Tom Araya. Come to find out he's a Catholic. It's like,
yeah,
these guys just don't. It's a scheme. It's about money. Again, those guys will answer to their own, when the time comes. But I just don't inflict that upon it. Like in Conquest, any imagery you see of my band, you don't see crosses portrayed as my way of faith. You don't see a pentagram, which is truly a Christian symbol from back in the day of the 4th century. But why go there either, right?
Yeah.
It's just like the devil horns. The devil horns. That's an old Italian thing where if you turn it around and you push your thumb forward and you spit through the so-called horns, that's what Italians did to push the evil away back in the day. And here we are throwing them up and calling them the devil horns, right? So, like usual, the devil confiscates anything that people use and do a lot, and he makes it his own. And we, as dumb people, gravitate and run to it, So, unfortunately.
What he's saying, friends, is true, because I got this interview. It was given to me by mutual shout out to Chip. It was given to me by Chip, and I looked the band up, and people think, they have this preconceived notion of what somebody's beliefs are going to make it sound like. I didn't catch it until a song or two in. I was like, oh, sweet. Because I was like, happy once I heard it, but I completely didn't expect it. Music is just, like you said, music is music. Speaking of, I have Angry Angel has a strange timing nuance, but I found it to be a really nice surprise that the guitar solo goes over that weird timing part. Tell us a little bit about that one.
What song?
Angry Angel.
That's not me. That's not me.
Oh, that's not you.
No.
Oh, wow, there you go on that one. All right, so that came up as... You can always trust YouTube, though. I don't know how they could have possibly gotten it wrong. Where are you booked to play? And where are some places that you can't wait to see? And kind of a second part to that, will you have time to actually enjoy that place?
Well, so our first show coming up here is next Friday. That's in St. Peters, Missouri, which is a good distance away from where I live. But that's a show with Burning Witches. And that'll be fun to do. That's the first date off of the actual starting this whole thing. And then we take about a month and a half off and shoot 2 videos, and then we start back up again in late September. And we go October, November, and December, and we take a break through the holiday, and we'll pick back up on the other side. Not sure what that's all going to look like yet. Everybody's working on that, and I know we got some dates like over in Sauget, Illinois, Chicago, Bloomington. Might get up. Where you at? Where you at in Ohio?
Canton.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
about 45 minutes to an hour south of Cleveland.
So what room is by you? What's the rock room by you?
The Cleveland Agora, a lot of people hit that. In Akron, probably the Empire, although it may have changed names again, but the Akron Empire. But for a show that big, it would probably hit the Agora in Cleveland.
Well, yeah, again, not sure how that's all going to... I get somewhat... I'm in on all this stuff, but when it gets to that part of it, I back off, because otherwise my brain gets overwhelmed with yes, no's. So I just kind of let them do it, and then we take it from there.
Do you have do you have time to actually see the places, or is it one of those things where by the time you get off the bus and sound check and it just all is a blur?
It varies. It just depends. There's been times we've all got out early and went up, found a park to go throw the football around, or go downtown somewhere and see what's going on. But again, in today's climate, man, going downtown's not always a wise move anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's. I did a documentary years ago in Chicago, and nobody ever asks me anything about the documentary. They always want to talk, about shootings or drive-bys. It's depending on where you go, it's the only thing people, unfortunately, have begun to associate with downtown.
And that really does suck, man, because there's a lot of great cities, and unfortunately, again, if you go back and forth between the politics and all that stuff, man, you just wonder what is happening to our great inner cities. You know what I mean? I mean, think about a place like Reggie's in Chicago. Been there forever, great room, not in a good area at all, and now we play there. We're going there. We're going straight back to the hotel room. You know what I mean? It's just not wise to go wander around. Too much nonsense can happen, for sure.
He Shall Return.
Yeah.
Very intriguing guitar intro. And then I wrote, it has this trudgy, almost doom metal feel to it. And listeners, I know you probably think that I, as your kind host, have lost his mind. He's talking about 80s music. He's talking about thrash. He's talking about almost being death metal. Now he's saying doom metal. Yes, friends, that is Conquest. It's really cool. And it conveys the second coming, in steady strides was the way I thought of it. I had a friend of mine, and this song brought that to mind. He said that when he was in a hurry, he used to drive to the Star Wars song, the Imperial March, because his goal isn't to blow by you. His goal is to steadily trudge past you, get out of my way. And that's what that song sort of felt like to me.
Yeah, so He Shall Return. I wrote that the main hook that you're referencing, the doom portion of it, I wrote that one night after me and my guitar player were bullshitting about Zakk Wylde and then Tony Iommi and how the styles were so uniquely different, but yet they borrowed from each other a lot when it came to phrasing, and it inspired me to write that hook. And when I got done with it, I went, hey, it sounds a little Sabbathy, it sounds a little doomy, but when I put all the ginger around it, it became Conquest. And lyrically, as you said, about the second coming, but also it describes the concept of society and why the second coming is possibly happening.
That I'm going to listen to it again thinking of that as well, because that's something that's interested me a lot. Because I've mentioned to a friend of mine not that long ago, I said, what if it's not necessarily it is, but it's not necessarily a particular sin that brings everything down. It's that through the corridors of time, the prophets were simply seeing which particular sin was happening in which particular spot so that they could tell you when the end was coming. And we focus on what the sin is more than the prophecy, which might just be pointing to one of many pictures in a room.
Without a doubt, and I always remind people, I'm a reader. I love to read, so I love to read old history. I love to read old takes on religion. And like I said, I am not a go grab my Bible and go to church on Sunday. That is not me. Not putting anybody down who does that. Knock yourself out if it makes you feel good. Go for it. But I do read those. I do read the scriptures. I also read Genesis, and I know that one thing is very, very, very clear, that the concepts are all identical, and he who spreads it out in the 5th century versus the 2nd century versus the current times, the end results is the same.
Yes, and I like that when this kind of thing is presented to people in that way. A lot of times they don't realize how historical things were. I recently found out that the oldest picture we have of Christ that isn't a mockery, that's the oldest one, unfortunately. It was the equivalent to a cartoon. The oldest
Right.
picture we have of someone trying to draw him depicts him as holding a wand, which a lot of people thought you needed to have in order to do healings. So it didn't necessarily mean that he had a wand, but that was how it was looked at in that day. And like you said, that kind of
Right.
history is so intriguing.
It is, and you can get. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes and so many variations and so many people trying to corrupt the true wording. It's like I argue with some of my really staunch Catholic friends, and I go, well, I mean, we agree on a lot, but we disagree on a lot too. And one of my biggest pet peeves is that, to me, organized religion paints everything as a perfect format. And I don't think anything was ever perfect on this planet when it comes to humanity. And I use this one analogy with my good friend Father Francisco. I say, Father, if everything was supposed to be so picture perfect as you guys paint it out to be, then why did Jesus pick 12 rebels as his disciples? Why didn't he walk down to the church and just get 12 men in robes who already knew the scriptures and go, you're appointed, you're appointed, and you're appointed? He did not do that. Why? And you know what they come up with? They don't have a good answer.
No, because we only know the name of 3 Pharisees: Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, and Paul. The rest of
And that's
them are
it.
like they never existed.
My point. And then you take, the apostle who went the farthest and spread the most word was the one who killed thousands of Jews. So, again, I say to everybody who feels that way about, oh, you're not a good Christian, you don't go to church, oh, you're not this, you're not this. Quit judging and start living your life, because we're all going to be judged one day. And if someone wants to go with you to church, take them. But if someone doesn't want to go with you to church, do not denounce them, because you become the problem at that point.
Yes, I think it was Hank Hanegraaff who said once, you don't need to worry about what anyone does, no matter how bad it is, because you will never be asked about their sin.
Right.
I have here 2005, Evil Times 2. I wrote
Right.
the thrashier end of thrash, not quite death metal, but absolutely brutal heavy, and that amazing shriek before the solo. What is that, like Mozart's High C?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, man, I wanted to be Rob Halford more than anything. I mean, he was my inspiration to singing.
You hit
I
it.
was never.
Let me tell you, friends, I can't. Hey, Super Potsy, come in here and hit that note for me.
Not happening.
Shout out to Super Potsy, whose computer I'm using here at the studio, 102.5 FM Neopa Radio. He hits that note. He just nails it. But yes, go ahead and finish talking about it. It's so cool.
No, well, what for me again was I've always wanted to sing that way. I grew up in that era where that was what a lead singer was supposed to be, and
Steelheart, yeah.
Say it again.
Steelheart, all those, yeah.
Oh yeah, your Steelhearts, your Halfords, your TNTs, all those guys, man. They were all hitting them notes, and I'm a huge Sabotage fan too, by the way. And
oh yes.
So you get into John Oliva's vocals. I love that he had the rasp, but then he had the high notes.
Gutter Ballet,
so anyway,
that whole CD.
I was a guitar player. I wasn't really a singer. I became a singer because I got tired of dealing with singers. So I led down a road that, again, I wasn't a good vocalist at all. I was pretty terrible. And I just stayed hard at work at it. Took a few vocal lessons, had a few vocal coaches tell me I would never sing like that. And I'm one of those people that when you tell me I'm not going to do it, I'm probably going to try to do it. You know, so I ended up working on it. Eventually, got to where I could do it real well, and I started utilizing it in the songs to keep it out of the Cookie Monster world.
Yeah.
And which gave birth to Evil Times 2 and songs on that little EP, Evil Times 2 Rage, which was off a different record actually earlier on, off the Rage record. But then it was also Devil's Playground on there, I mean, just straight ahead, like you said, in your face style heavy metal. So, very cool.
A lot of bands that go in those extremes that a lot of people listen to now, particularly the European metal bands, when they do that, there's two different singers doing that, which I thought was just so impressive with the way you do it. It was just, wow. It was almost like a King Diamond sort of jump in vocal styles.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you call out the new record, man, being so diverse. You listen to, on that record, if you go to the first track, of the Devil's Creed, you listen to that style of Conquest, and you go listen to what you called out, Save Me. Two different styles, but still Conquest through and through. Then you go to He Shall Return, still Conquest through and through. Then you go to Love Amplified. Wow, right? What a right turn. Have you heard that tune?
I listened to the whole thing twice. Is that the slower one?
That's the one. It's more of a upbeat Van Halen start out hook, with a wow.
Okay. Because we were listening to it last night before the interview. Yes.
So it's all over the place, and you get into the Valley of the Dam, which goes back over into the old school thrash style. I just don't, especially for Conquest. I don't like records when songs sound like the same song as track 1 is the same song as track 5. Which is the same song as track 10. It's just not my idea of cool. I really dig being diverse with inside of itself.
If you've ever been to a death metal show, by the time festival, by the time the band's show is on who you were waiting for, it's gone.
You're wore out.
You're done.
Yep. Totally agree. I think there's an age thing there. When it all started kicking in and everybody ran one way, I was the guy still standing there going, where's everybody going? You know what I mean? I just never got off on that. I'm a huge Testament fan. I'm a Metallica fan. I'm a Megadeth fan. I'm a big Sabotage fan. I'm a huge Judas Priest fan.
Me too.
Speaking of another great record, man, come out this year. Just a great record.
That Invincible Shield is not only flawless, but the extra bonus songs are flawless.
Yeah, there's nothing bad. Zero,
astounding.
And I saw them guys a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so ago, and Rob was, on top of his game beyond belief, 70-something-year-old man. So he inspires me. As long as you keep your act together, you can keep going,
You'll still be hitting those Evil 2 notes. It's going to happen. You mentioned Testament. I'm sure you've found this out yourself. I've mentioned this, listeners will know. The incredible niceness of both Exodus and Testament, who are always together. I'm sure they were that way to you. The nicest people in the world are in those two bands.
Oh, without a doubt. Again, I've had the pleasure to play on the same stage with both those bands several times over again. And, Chuck Billy, great guy, man. I mean, everybody in the band's a good guy. And when they played a club over in Illinois called Pops, we played probably there 2 or 3 times with those guys over there. That's kind of like our home base, if you would, for the Conquest camp. Pops nightclub over in Sauget, Illinois. But great room, big room. Everybody loves to play there. And again, Chuck Billy, just outstanding. Sat out back, hung out with each other a little bit. They're just good people. You know what I mean? It makes a difference. Makes a big difference.
2 questions left. I have your new bassist absolutely shines on Celtic Mist, and the way the solo hits at the end of that song, it just flies. Those 2 nuances stood out to me immediately. Not just the speed of that solo at the end, but how it's like Potsy mentioned this yesterday. The bass sort of pops out on the new CD quite a bit. It's very, it's in your face in a good way.
So yeah, for me, man, I love making records. I love producing records, and so when I start a record, I start thinking about the overall sound of it. What are these tunes? What do they actually sound like? What do they really produce? Am I gonna bury the bass guitar because we're called a thrash band? Most thrash band bass players are, you can interchange them. Nobody knows who's playing what.
True.
You
Wasn't it Dave Mustaine who said the awful thing that nobody really cares what the bassist does anyway? He was something like that. And I'm like, ouch.
Yeah, right. Well, see, I'm 100% believe differently. I like music. I like all the musical instruments to have a purpose. And Rob's been with us since 2012. The newest guy in the band's Lee, the drummer. But Rob produces bass lines like nobody else. I mean, I show him a hook. He goes, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he throws a cool little vibe in there. So when it comes to putting tunes together, I let these guys play their hearts out. From a producer standpoint, if it's going to step on a spot where there's a lyric or it's overplayed in an area, I'll say something. But overall, man, I let Rob put his bass lines down the way he likes them, and I'll throw ideas out at him if it seems a little mundane in a particular spot or something. But he delivers, man. His melodies on the bass are just phenomenal. And when you get to Mike, you're talking about leads, man. Mike Crook has come so far on the guitar in the last 15 years. It's just unbelievable, some of the leads he comes up with. And again, totally awesome. Maybe you were referencing earlier the song called "In the Heavens." I'm not sure. But that's a very interesting track on the record. Everybody's surprised. We have no idea. When you put a record out, you don't know what everybody's going to gravitate to. You're way too close to the tunes to have an opinion. And them songs are shining. Babylon America has caught a lot of ground here lately too, man. Amazing how much people are digging that tune. And again, to me, that's kind of like a Queen song, if you would. So I don't know. We love to make it. We love to play it. And we try real hard to keep it real. When Lee came in on the drums, Tim was a great drummer. Lee came in because Tim had physical problems. We couldn't handle the job much anymore. So
that would be horrible.
Lee has known him for years, and man, he came in and just killed the drum parts. Brought his own vibe to the table, and we love it. So.
No, I said two questions, but I lied. You mentioned lineup changes, and someone that he was too ill, not able to perform. Have you had experiences with lineup changes? How's that been with the band? Because I did notice that throughout the years it looked like the personnel had changed some.
There's been some changes, obviously. I've been doing this since 1984, really. And then, by the time I made a real band, it was, 1989, and we were moving forward. But a couple lineup changes in the mid-'90s. What brought Mike into the band, Mike's been here since 94, late 94. Tim, prior to that, had been with me up until, like I said, 2000 on drums since 1987. So he was with me for a long time. But the band has always had its stability. Rob actually played with me back in high school, the bass player. So when I needed a bass player, I called him because I knew he was a finger player, and I like bass players that play with their fingers. So he brought back in that vibe that I was totally looking for, and it's been good. The band has been pretty solid on the format we're on now. When we get together, we're glad to see each other. We're glad to do it. It's not, oh God, this guy sucks. It's very very uplifting to jam and be in the same room with the guys.
When I was setting up this interview last night, he's sitting beside me now. The founder of the show, Rock Stew, Potsy was completely grooving out to Celtic Mist. All right,
right on.
My famous last question. I've had you here asking you everything for 34 minutes. What is one thing that nobody has ever asked you that you thought they should have, or something that you would like to say to everybody that's never come up in an interview?
Well, that's pretty interesting. Good question. I don't know. I've done probably 50, 60 interviews in the last 2 months, so I've talked about everything under the sun. So let me think for a second here real quickly. I'm glad that you asked the questions you have. The one, if I have a pet peeve, let's go that route.
Okay.
I hate the standards. I hate, what year did you get started? What made you play music? I mean, I understand that those are fair questions, and I get it. But it's if you've done any research on the band, you know that the band's been here for a couple days now, and I started the band. That's pretty obvious in all the scripture of the band when you get into the bios and what have you. But we've been blessed. We've got to play with everybody under the sun, all my heroes. I haven't got to open up for Metallica. I haven't got to open up for Megadeth. But I have been on the same stage with Iron Maiden. I've been on the same stage with Rob Halford. I've been on the same stage with Queensryche and Slayer, Sabotage, everybody from the 80s. I played a lot of the festivals back in the late days of that stuff. So I was on a lot of bills with those guys. So that was always a lot of fun.
You also got to. I only met him once. I'm assuming you got to meet Jan Werman from Children of Bodom. I play keyboards.
Oh yeah.
So his name is like an Elvis to me. It just wow. I was looking at this list. They sent this to me when I got some of the other bands that really popped out. How many times do you know a band that's played with both the Children of Bodom and Queensryche? It was
right.
Hatebreed and Sebastian Bach and Jackal. You can't beat that list of people, friends.
We've been blessed, man. Again, I think everybody who's ever helped me get wherever I was going, and I've had a lot of help in my life, and I appreciate those people and giving me those opportunities, because again, when you're a younger kid and you're looking up and you're trying to do it, those things mean something. And at the end of the day, I always say it's about the music, but it's also about the brotherhood and the sisterhood, if you would, of the art form. And there's a lot more girls in it in today's world. And like I said, we're playing with Burning Witches next Friday. But I just think that those are the things that are overlooked. The camaraderie that comes with this, no different than a baseball team or a football team or anything like that. You got to have camaraderie because you got to hang out with each other. You got to sleep in the same beds sometimes with your brothers. You know what I mean? You got one hotel room and there's 6 of you. You know what I mean? What do you do? So somebody takes the floor. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. So those parts of it, man, the stories that come out of the after, the stage is always a blast, but the stories that come out of the before and after are always a lot of fun too.
Without a doubt, it would have to be with the list of people who you play with and the way it sounds like so many people have been in your band for so long. It would have to be an absolute blast. Friends, do not miss Conquest. Now, Conquest is a very popular name, which is how I think I pulled the wrong song on one of the questions.
Probably.
So, friends, pay attention to this. Derrick, how can they find the correct Conquest?
Well, if you ever notice my webpage, my Facebook stuff, anything to do with Conquest, it always says Conquest Metal. And then that way you don't pull up the wrong band. If you go to YouTube and you say Conquest on YouTube, you're going to get country stuff, you're going to get hip-hop stuff, you're going to get other bands that were heavy metal bands. There's a couple of them from over in Europe back in the day. They've all bowed out, but the music's still out there. And I'm sure there's a young kid somewhere else who went, wow, that's a cool name, and they're starting a band called that. You can't copyright the name Conquest because it's subjective. So you have to, the way it's written, that's mine, that's ours, that's the way it goes. But the actual name you can't do because it's not a prefab name.
Oh no, you see, that's interesting. You've just answered one of the questions that I had about a month or two ago. I'm so happy you did that. I got to interview again, our mutual friend, shout out to Chip. I got to interview Wicked. And my first thought was, how in 7 hells was the name Wicked opened in 2024? You you answered the question.
And that's how, and that's why. It's two of this, one of the other. But again, when I came up with Conquest, I was 13 years old. I didn't play music. It was the very first night I ever got high in my life. And I was up at the schoolyard with my buddy at the time, and his aunt was in town, and she was only 2 years older than us, and she was his aunt. And she got us high, and we were back at his house, and his girlfriend at the time said, "Hey, my brother's got a drum kit. Tony, you should buy it." And I said, "Yeah, man, get that drum kit." And I played a lot of hockey back then. So one of my buddies had a guitar over in the corner, and I traded him a hockey stick for it. And that was the beginning of it all. And I went downstairs on my one string on the guitar that wasn't broken, and I wrote a song called Conquest. And here we are.
Now you need to write an instrumental song called Hockey Stick.
There you go, right? That's great.
Thank you so much for talking to us. I really do appreciate it.